Hello and welcome to Burning Arrow Elementalist 326 Technically Build Guide and Diary series. With this one, I'm closing the door on the chapter of Burning Arrow Elementalist as I am moving on towards the second build of the league that I'm going to do. However, this build is not going to be dismantled. I am still going to use this character as this is a very feels good build to clear the entirety of maps and things, especially like Legion and Breach, and it just is awesome. Now, this build uses an Ignite. Ignite is a damage over time that is being applied through the Burning Arrow effect, which we have 100% chance to ignite, and also Burning Arrow converts all of the physical damage that we have into fire. Now, when it comes to ignites do not stack. There is only one ignite. However, the effects of two ignites can be on the target, according to PoE Wiki, which means we can apply some debuffs like that. But the highest damaging ignite is the one that is always going to be applied. We are, with this build, stacking damage over time multiplier or fire damage over time multiplier on the target in order to get as much as possible damage for the ignite. Now, when you see a modifier ignites, you inflict deal damage faster, it just means it's the tick rate of the ignite that deals damage faster. If it lasts shorter or longer, the same damage will apply there. But if we have them deal damage faster, that means the tick rate is actually faster. You will see that later on in the POB once I open up the config, when we are going to swap between two awakened gems, depending on what kind of build or what kind of mechanics you want to do, either bossing or mapping. Now, without further ado, let's go through the Ascendancy first. Our Ascendancy is Elementalist with 5 Ascendancy points, which means we're using Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh. For Forbidden Flame or Forbidden Flesh, you can take any of the 5 notables, whichever one is the cheapest at the time of purchase. The cheapest one for me was Mastermind of Discord. Now let's talk about it. Mastermind of Discord means that when we apply exposure, we inflict an additional 25% exposure resistance shred. So if you inflict exposure like 10-12%, you are going to shred additional 25%. This is also stacking with the Fire Mastery, which we have here. So fire exposure inflict applies an extra 5%. How do we apply fire exposure? We apply fire exposure via gloves modifier from an implicit that is Eater of Worlds, inflict fire exposure and hit, applying 12% of fire resistance. From greater, it goes from 11 to like 14-15%. That's how we apply exposure. Now, the main two that we need are Liege of the Primordial, which gives us summoned golems are immune to elemental damage, 100% increased effect of buffs granted by golems. Summoned golems are resummoned 4 seconds after being killed and +2 to maximum. We have 1 by default. This makes it so that we have 3. That node plus this node up here, Golem Commander, gives our golems 180% effect on their buffs, and it gives us total of 4 golems, which we can immediately acquire upon acquiring the Ascendancy, which is usually I do it after I kill Dominus and defeat Vol in Act 4, first map. That's where we get our first golem. That's where we can get all of them if you play the game the first time the league. Next one that is very important, Shaper of Flames. For Shaper of Flames, after we get this, we can respec the chance to ignite nodes that we have previously taken, because this makes our hits always ignite. Now, this also doesn't mean that if monsters have chance to avoid elemental ailments modifier, that we are going to ignite them. We are not. They're still going to avoid elemental ailments. It is what it is. This one also does all damage can ignite, which means physical, fire, chaos, lightning, cold, fire, it doesn't matter. All damage can ignite. This is very good as we are going to use a multiple elemental hit, let's call it like that, bow, added elemental damage. So a bow with as much elemental damage as possible is going to be our go-to. When it comes to the best bow for the build, the best bow would be a Solarin bow with as much more damage and such, because we don't really care about attack speed that much. We have buffs from the golem, and it is just going to fuel in all the damage from the bow into one condensed thing. More on that in just a second. Now, the last line says this: enemies ignited by you have 40% of physical damage they deal converted to fire. This is immediately a good defense node as well, because if an enemy hits us with 10,000 physical damage, it's going to hit us with 6,000, and 4,000 is going to go over the fire resistance, which usually is 75%, so that is going to be reduced by 75%, which is an awesome node. Great in combination with Bastion of Elements. Bastion of Elements triggers level 20 Primal Aegis when allocated. Primal Aegis can take 75 elemental damage per allocated notable passive skill. Other Aegis skills are disabled, cannot take reflected ele damage. Now, whenever you have a notable here picked up, Primal Aegis is going to store that amount, and as you can see here, we currently have 2325 elemental damage shield. This stacks, obviously, with the Shaper of Flames, which means any physical hit is going to hurt less. This, however, does not work in PoB, as I've clicked some options here and there, tried yada yada, so we are tankier than what the PoB says, but it is what it is. It's a very good defense node that we can take, and usually you would choose between Bastion of Elements and Mastermind of Discord, depending on what you lack in the damage. But both of these are excellent picks for damage and for defense. And the last node is Shaper of Storms. The same as Shaper of Flame, Shaper of Storms allows our hits to always shock, and shocks from our hits always increase damage taken by at least 25%, and all damage can shock, which basically means that no matter with how much damage we hit an enemy, it is going to have at least 25% shock on it. Now, usually on targets, it goes up to like 50 or so with no big deal, which means it increases our damage done, technically increases enemies' damage taken by 25 to 50%, depending on the effect of shock. 1% increases 1% damage. Now that is for the Ascendancy. When it comes to the tree, you will see it in PoB. The tree has stayed mostly the same as to my previous Burning Air Elementalist guide, with the exception of I'm now level 98 instead of 97. I have taken this node here for golems, this node here for faster ignites, and for explosion. I've removed one cluster jewel here, and instead of a jewel, instead of jewel for Let's Shade, I've taken all of these points. If you want to save one passive point, you would go here for basic jewel socket, and you would remove these three, and you would take the jewel that allows you to get points around Let's Shade, and I would still take all of them. There's no reason to go to level 100, but if you want to go to level 100, you can go there, save 1 point, you still have 3, you would go 1, 2, 3, and here you would have a rare jewel with fire damage multiplier, damage over time multiplier, burning damage, fire damage or 2 fire damage, life, corrupted blood, whatever you choose. But one important thing is this one, Lethal Pride 16481. It will be linked in the PoB where you can get it. It's usually readily available at 1 divine a pop, which is great. One of my viewers told me about this one, that it was available. I was using a different one with like endurance charges and stuff, which was also good, 3 burning damage ones. But this one became readily available and now can be bought for 1 divine and more, depending on if you're really chasing that one or not. You can have alternatives. Now, one more important thing, early on we take Elemental Overload, and Elemental Overload gives us this. Whenever we deal a crit, it doesn't deal extra damage, but our damage gets increased by 40%. Well, more multiplier, 40%. Skills that have dealt a crit strike in the past 8 seconds deal 40% more elemental damage with hits and ailments. Your crit strikes do not deal extra damage. Ailments never count as being from crit strikes. Basically, this is just a free 40% more damage boost, and it's represented by a little diamond on our ability whenever we do so. Our base crit for now is around there you go, 11% that we have, which is way too much, but it works nonetheless. Okay, let's go over the gear. Gear is bow with as much elemental damage and physical damage as possible. So there's that. This bow currently has 1103 total and 988 elemental. However, the modifiers that we are looking for are not fully done here. We are looking for a damage over time multiplier as a suffix. We are looking for an empty suffix, and we can also look for a third mod, whichever mod you want. If you want to go instead of GMP to Snipe, you can go with 2 projectiles. If you don't, then leave it with attack speed or whatever, but we don't need it because of the golem. Now, the last modifier that we add, why did I say an empty suffix? If you go to a bow and you go fire damage, we have fire damage over time multiplier. That's over time multiplier, which means it is more damage. We want that one. So ideal bow would be damage over time multi, fire damage over time multi, plus 2 arrows. Good luck. But grab a good bow because that is going to be very, very useful for the build. Let's go over the chest. Chest piece has our 6 link inside. You can either alternate between chest piece and the bow. Doesn't really matter. We use only 1 6 link and 1 5 link. I don't have it rolled here because it doesn't really matter. I'll explain it in a second. But for Burning Arrow, we have 2120 Burning Arrow. I've explained it in the POB how to get it via Alva, because rarely people even sell it. Greater multiple projectiles to get more projectiles on our thing, or if you want to swap to a single target setup, we swap to Snipe, where we hold our bow, we have charges up here, and those charges increase our damage that we deal over the course of the amount of charges that we pull. That's for single target. It gives us a lot more damage. I will show it in POB as well after explanation of the gear. Next one, mandatory uniques, or pardon, next one for the chest piece. I've taken a chest piece with as much evasion rating. I crafted my own. I did it with chaos res because it just needed chaos res, and I have 1 extra cold resistance that I don't really need. So if you want to make a different chest piece, feel free to. If you want to use a different thing, feel free to as well. You can make the dexterity one. I have a guide on how to make the chest piece, which is perfectly fine, perfectly suitable. Choose whatever you want. I just wanted to do this one. I hit it with Chaos Essence, the tier 3 Chaos Essence, until it hit something good, and it hit in like 20 or something. So there's that. Do not buy a pre-6 link done one because it's going to be way more expensive. But Syndicate Garb is the top quality one. Uniques. We have the mandatory unique Barracks Respite for AoE. Single target, this one does not do squat. But for AoE, this makes our ignites when we kill, and shocks when we kill an enemy, inflict an equivalent ignite on each nearby enemy. This makes it so that we have to fire less, and ignites will spread more by enemy dying, enemy ignite being spread, and it will just clear the forest. Now, how do we spread ignites? We spread ignites out on our gloves with Searing Exarch implicit modifier. Ignites you inflict spread to other enemies within 1.3 meters. If you don't have Ignite Spread, use Ignite Proliferation instead of Combustion in the main support. Now, Burning Arrow, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Awaken Swift Affliction, Combustion, Ele damage with attacks, and Burning damage support are great supports unless you want to use not Unbound Ailments. Deadly Ailments. Deadly Ailments is excellent as well to use. Where is it? There we go. Awaken Deadly Ailments. It will make our ignites last longer. They will deal roughly the same amount of damage, but Deadly Ailments is very good on bosses because it allows you to just fire, and then 2.5 seconds later we can fire again and such, instead of like every 2 seconds. So choose your poison wisely, or choose your ignite wisely. Polaric Devastation is another ring that gives us cover enemies in ash for 5 seconds when you ignite them in left ring slot, And what does that mean? Applies 20% less movement speed and 20% increased fire damage taken, which means we deal 20% more damage. When it comes to the Yadi and Dawn disables our physical damage, which is great, as we are not using it anyways other than on Frenzy, but that makes us able to roll physical reflect maps, as we couldn't. And this gives us, ignites you inflict with attacks, deal damage 35% faster, which gives us the tick rate that it deals way faster, which is an insanely good belt. Okay, gloves. Gloves, I've bought these like this. They were like a divine or less or so, because nobody wants accuracy on the gloves. So accuracy, resistance, chance to suppress spell damage is good. Because we don't need one suffix, one elemental resist suffix, you can craft your own gloves. You can get fractured accuracy and then hit it with Essence of Zeal for attack speed, and then until you get to chance to suppress, and follow my written guide for crafting the gloves in the previous POB. So you can do that one. Helmet is mana reservation efficiency helmet to the wazoo, chaos res fracture on whichever base you want. That is evasion rating base. And you hit it with mana reservation efficiency of skills until this is essence of loathing, until you get spell suppression, and until you get decent like evasion and stuff. And you hit it with ether and searing for mana res efficiency and reduced mana cost of skills. Next, boots. Crafted boots for elemental ailment immunity. The guide is in the POB and in the description. For necklace, I've chosen to all elemental resistance so that we can save a suffix slot. Chaos resistance and dexterity is technically a must on a jade amulet. And the prefixes, you can do whatever the quack you want. You can do life, you can do fire damage, you can do physical damage. This one was the only one available at the time. It was 1 divine. They usually go around 1 divine with all LRS, dexterity and chaos res, but that's it. Quiver was Quiver with dexterity, as we need dexterity, 1 resistance and damage over time multi, with a lot of life, phys damage, fire damage, and such. This one was also like 1 divine or less. We want damage over time multi. Now, to go over the Enlighten situation, you do not need Enlighten for this build. Now, why do I say so? Yes, we do have 60 mana. When we fire, we use 40 mana. However, we have Leech, we have Regen, we have every means to support our character to get it. The only reason why I have Enlighten is because I dropped it. You do not need an Enlighten. This is an extra socket that is. So you can basically have 4 linked here, whatever. You can add with these extra 2 links. You can add Blood Rage, you can add Blood Rage Automation as an example. You can add whatever you want. It's absolutely fine. I'm leveling that. Whatever you want, it's absolutely fine. You are not gaining too big of a benefit. Why? Because you're not going to fire consistently enough for it to matter so that you have more mana. You fire, you wait 2 seconds, you fire again, or you wait a second, then you fire again, then you fire again, right? So it's not a spammer build. It is basically fire, dash, fire, dash, fire, dash, fire, dash. That's how it is. When there's a tougher enemy, you do curse for flammability, and that's basically fine. So it's a 3-button build. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Or 1, 2, 3, whichever one. Okay, now in regards to POB. POBs are going to be linked in the description. Well, technically just one. But my previous POB for the build guide should be followed, because there I've done the original stuff for the league start. In the POB that is going to be here, we have here the things. Just read it out. Hopefully you guys will read the POB. Hopefully, but it is what it is. And here is how it looks. Now, the damage is around 3.3 million with the configuration where I've reduced elemental resistances based on how much we shred, but I didn't enable the snipe. There you go. But I didn't enable the snipe. Now, when I enable snipe here, let me add snipe, 2120. If I enable snipe instead of GMP and we do snipe, well, burning arrow on snipe stages, right? So snipe, and we go to config snipe stages 7, we are dealing 11.7 million roughly damage with ignite. It is extremely good and it works perfectly fine. So you can do it yourself. You can play around the POB, enjoy. If you want Swift Affliction or if you want Deadly Ailments, enjoy whichever one you want there. 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. Or there you go. I prefer Swift Affliction because I play timed content, which is great. If you want to play bosses, just do Deadly Ailments, and that's basically it. Am I forgetting something? I think I'm not forgetting anything. Oh, yeah, one thing. Immortal Call is enabled in the build for this reason. We have 9k Fizz Max Kit. This is wrong. Even with Immortal Call disabled, we have 5.8k Fizz Max Kit. This is wrong. Why? Because POB does not, it seems, calculate the 40% damage taken as fire. So 40% of physical as fire, and then that's reduced on Primal Ages because it doesn't count Primal Ages, yada yada, blah blah blah. You are way tankier than POB shows. Keep that in mind. That's very, very important to note. And I think I haven't forgotten anything. I have dawdled way too much. It's time for me to stream. So the next build is going to be the Immortal Gladiator. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this detailed breakdown of the build on how you can build it. You can build it this version or you can build it the new version. Absolutely fine. Everything is said here and done in the POB notes. I will just add the crafted stuff for the boots, but you can also find all the crafts and everything on my website. Here we go. We have body armor here, suppression or general craft with step-by-step process if you would like. And also we have ailment immunity boots with step-by-step process too that you can actually do yourself. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a like if you did, if you enjoyed it, sub if you don't mind. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next PoE video or stream. Have a good one.